Hey, hello there, what's up? So if you haven't heard yet, there is finally a complete patch to Fire Emblem Thracia 1776, also known as Fire Emblem 5. The community has waited for years and years and years, but finally, thanks to the efforts of Project Exile, there is one, and I could not be happier about it. I know there's tons of people who want to play this game, but didn't want to have to deal with the old translation patch, and now you can finally enjoy this high quality one instead. And boy, if you still haven't played this game, you are in for a treat. FE5 is by far my favorite game, and you do not want to miss out on playing it. But this game has quite the reputation, and some of you might be a little scared. You might have heard that FE5 is really difficult, the hardest Fire Emblem of them all maybe. Well, thankfully that's far from the truth, as nowadays there's much harder difficulties like FE12 Lunatic Reverse. FE5 is a different kind of hard, it's closer to what TV tropes would call Nintendo hard. No link in the description, cause I don't want you to get lost in the TV tropes thing when I need you to finish watching my video. What Nintendo hard means in this case is that FE5 is mostly hard for blind players. It doesn't have a tutorial, and most of its mechanics either only have a vague introduction or are completely unexplained, so you have to learn through trial and error. Then the game also throws a couple of curveballs that you can only really see coming if you read the guide beforehand, which is exactly what Kaga might have thought, because there's a rumor going around that he made this game this way to sell more guidebooks. Sorry Fates, you thought you were clever with your sleazy business practices, but Kaga did it first. But if you know what shenanigans this game has in store for you, then Thracia isn't really that hard. It's still not easy and requires that you pay attention, or it can screw you up good, but it pretty much always gives you the means to beat whatever you're facing. For most of the game, I'd say the player characters are actually more powerful than the enemies, and you're given a ton of tools to break the game with. So now that you're aware of this, there are 3 different routes you can take. Once again, Kaga did it first. The first and most brave thing to do would be to play the game completely blind. As a wise man once said, you can only play a game blind once, and in my opinion, that is too powerful of an experience to ruin. I recommend doing this. I recommend you not worry about missing characters, items, and other things. I recommend you don't worry about min-maxing your stats, getting all the secrets, making the best possible viable endgame team. I just recommend you try to beat the game with all the tools the game gives you, but no guide. It'll be a challenge, and you'll probably get your ass kicked, but you'll probably feel really good about yourself when you finish it. So go ahead, do it. Second option is the polar opposite. You look up everything you possibly can about the game so that you won't miss anything. You check out who recruits which character and in what chapter, you find all the hidden items, Gaiden chapters, but not just that, you check out everyone's growths, any hidden stats you might find, what all the different skills do, how to optimally distribute your scrolls, what chapter to use your warp staff on. Basically, you make sure you're ready for anything the game will throw at you. This is an option I definitely do not recommend on your first playthrough. By reading up on every aspect of the game, you'll find yourself with no room to discover anything. Every little thing you look up in advance is one that you won't find yourself, and finding and inventing things yourself is so rewarding. Instead, you should do this later on a fresh playthrough. However, I do understand if you don't want to go in blind. I didn't do it myself. I had people telling me things and I was looking up things on Serenus Forest. I did, however, feel like I looked up too much in retrospect. I optimized the playthrough way too much. I even arena abused and scroll abused, and I shouldn't have. But it's also a bit too easy to get into this game and miss recruitable characters or Gaiden chapters, perhaps even get stuck somewhere. I really wouldn't have wanted that myself. So the goal of this video is simple. Give you just enough information to not get soft locked and get all the characters and chapters, and I'll also give some explanations on certain mechanics along the way, but I will not spoil you. I'll go through the game chapter by chapter, naming things that could easily be missed. I'll be vague on purpose both in the descriptions and footage, so that as little gets spoiled as possible. You might not want to watch this video all the way through right away. What you might want to do, and this is my recommendation, is watch it for one chapter, pause the video, play the game for one chapter, and then come back here and check out the video for the next chapter. And that way you'll still be mostly blind, and you won't know what's coming. That said, you do still have to pay attention to the in-game dialogue, because I'm not going to give away information that the game is clearly giving you through the dialogue, for example between Leaf and his tactician, so you'll have to do some looking around yourself too. And that's just about all I have to say as an introduction, so from here on out I'm going to discuss the game chapter by chapter. If you find this guide helpful, drop a like down below, and if there's anything you want to ask about Thracia, maybe another guide request, drop a comment and I might get to it. In Chapter 1, Avel talks about capturing. Capturing means forcibly rescuing an enemy. To do this, use the capture command. You can only use the capture command if your constitution is higher than the enemy constitution. Mounted units like Finn are treated as having 20 constitution when capturing, so he can capture just about anything. When you try to capture an enemy, a normal round of combat will happen, but most of your stats will be cut in half during the battle. If you manage to reduce the enemy HP to 0, you will capture the enemy. The capturing unit will rescue them, and you'll be able to trade their inventory to yourself. Don't worry too much about capturing everything in sight. It might seem tempting to get everything, but you really don't need it, and it will make the game very tedious for you. Also, you'll find that some units are very unreliable at capturing, while others are very good. Try using only the ones that are good at it when you want to capture something. I need to emphasize, you really don't need to capture that much to beat the game. The game does not expect you to. Also, just a small tip, if an enemy has no usable 1 range or 2 range weapons in their inventory, the capture command will instantly let you capture them. In Chapter 2, you can unlock Chapter 2X, which you do by making sure none of the villages are destroyed. Just visit them, there's some good items and a new character in there. Okay, this is gonna get old fast. Let me find a new sound for transitions. Perfect! Okay, so as you could tell from that bit in Chapter 2, this guide is not gonna tell you everything there is to discover. I could make a 30-minute video out of every chapter, but that will probably just spoil every surprise in them, and that kind of defeats the point of this guide. Generally, I'm only going to provide advice when a game doesn't properly hint at something, or is too cryptic at it. I'm going to make sure that you don't accidentally miss out on Gaiden chapters, recruitable characters, and a couple of hidden items, but there's still plenty to figure out yourself. And again, you should make sure you pay attention to what the game tells you. If you want more elaborate guides or step-by-step walkthroughs on certain things, I'm perfectly happy to make them, but this is not the place for them. Chapter 2X is the first chapter that has Thracia fog, aka pitch dark. You can't even see the terrain of the map, and that can be pretty intimidating. But if you pay close attention to the cutscenes, you get a pretty good hint of where you're supposed to go. There are also 2 torches available near the starting point, one on an enemy warrior and one on a fort, south of your starting position. There's a talk conversation between Leif and Avel that you should check out early on for an important hint. And if you see a really strong enemy sword fighter, just leave him alone. Chapter 3, if you want to get all the Gaiden chapters, make sure Daktar and Tanya are alive, and give Daktar some vulneraries. The thief you have can not only steal items, but also weapons and tomes, as long as his speed is higher than the enemies, and his constitution is higher than the weight of the thing he's trying to steal. You can grow constitution in this game, but the odds aren't very good. Generally, you can count on him being able to steal tomes. To unlock Chapter 4X, you need all the civilians to escape. The brigands do not matter. Pay attention to the dialogue to know how the escape objective works. If you want to recruit all the characters, you want to make sure all the civilians in Chapter 4X escape as well. The Green Sage cannot be recruited, but you can talk to him with Karen to get a new item. Chapter 8 is the first chapter with the preparations menu, and also your first meeting with the fatigue mechanic. Every time a unit takes an action that gains EXP, like combat, stealing, using a staff, etc., that unit accumulates fatigue. Most actions give 1 point of fatigue, but higher rank staffs give some more. You can see how fatigued the unit is in the status menu. Maybe you've played Shadows of Valencia and you're familiar with fatigue, but in this game it's very different. It does not affect a unit's combat performance. However, if during a preparations menu, a unit has more fatigue than they've got max HP, they cannot be deployed. You can reset their fatigue to 0 by letting them sit out a chapter, or giving them the S-Drink item. If you give him an S-Drink item in the preparations menu, they can be deployed and their fatigue will be reset. They cannot consume it during the preps. For this chapter in particular, a lot of your units will probably be fatigued. If your mage is not fatigued, make sure to have him sit the chapter out anyways, because you need him next chapter. Unfortunately, you cannot change the starting positions of your units the way you can in other games, and this can be rather annoying to deal with. If you want a certain unit in a different position, you can sometimes get that done by deploying or undeploying units that are before them in the deployment order. If you want to know what slot in the deployment order corresponds to which starting position, check out Fire Emblem WOD. This chapter has a shop where you can buy door keys. In total, you want to buy like 14 of them throughout the game, and I recommend you get like 7 here while you have the chance. You cannot send items to the convoy when shopping here, so just empty one character's inventory and have him buy 7. You do get more chances to buy door keys later. To unlock chapter 8X, you have to capture and hold on to the boss. This can be a bit tedious, but there are ways to make it easier and more reliable. Promoting Finn can help for one. You want to capture him before turn 16. In chapter 8X, you really want to deploy your mage, because the boss is really hard to kill otherwise. That's why I recommended leaving him out last chapter. Also, this chapter is the reason I recommended giving the warrior vulneraries. In chapter 9, there's a secret conversation involving your recently recruited cavalier, so you might want to deploy him. If you want to go to chapter 11X, you need to finish this map within 30 turns. You also need to activate a certain event that has to do with the boss and the paladin in the middle of the map. You'll know what I mean when you see it. You should bring a thief and around 6 door keys. Also, the paladin in the middle of the map needs to not die. You should bring a couple of door keys to this map. You can recruit the female prisoner, but you don't have to. If you don't have her, there's a different character you can recruit later, but only if you don't have her in your party. To unlock chapter 12X, you need to complete this chapter within 19 turns. You'll want to do it while holding the boss, just like in chapter 2 and chapter 8, so bring a good capture bot like Finn. Sleep status does not wear off, by the way, it's a huge pain in the butt. There are 3 different people who can recruit the boss, but only one of them gets something special out of it. The Myrmidon can be recruited by the boss, or simply by capturing him and holding onto him. It's not too hard to figure out who recruits the cleric girl, but it is someone related to her, who has been in your party for quite a bit. In chapter 13, Selphina can talk to Glade to get a good weapon. You do not have to worry about keeping Glade's generic soldiers alive, or escaping with them, because this is the only map where they are available. If you want to go to chapter 14X, you'll want to visit the red houses within the walls of the city that don't give you anything. To unlock it, you need to visit a minimum of 3, but visiting more will give you more potential rewards. The womanizer that's in the house in the upper right can be recruited by your troubadour. It's worth noting that chapter 14X is the only Gaiden chapter that doesn't have a recruitable unit in it, so if you want to get all characters but not every chapter, you can skip this one. You cannot recruit the paladin, but you can recruit the hero with leaf. This chapter features a route split. If you don't have the female mage knight from chapter 11X, you'll want to go to the front door route, also known as the A route, rather than the forest one, also known as the B route, as the alternative character only appears in that one. Both routes feature fairly tricky chapters, but if I had to pick one for being more beginner friendly, it would be the A route. You can end the map by either going to the blue arrows with leaf, but visiting the church in the middle will also end it, and give you the choice on where to go. I'll cover both routes in this guide. Also, this chapter is a second chance to buy door keys. It's also the best opportunity. I recommend you buy 14 between this shop and the last one in chapter 8. The Mage Knight that's not a complete douchebag is the recruitable replacement for the other Mage Knight. You can talk to him with your Pegasus Knight. The enemy cavaliers in this group have sleep swords. I recommend you thief staff one of them for an easier recruitment later. You cannot recruit the paladin reinforcements. The green Pegasus Knight in this chapter is very stubborn but recruitable. You need to talk to her with your Pegasus Knight, and yes, she does a lot of recruiting, and then you need to capture her. You cannot capture a mounted unit, but you can force her to dismount by putting her to sleep. After you've captured her, you have to hold on to her for the rest of the chapter, just like with the Thief and the Chapter 8 boss. If Leaf stands on the castle gate in this chapter, you get a new character. Bring the Womanizing Bard as well, even if you didn't train him. You'll also want to obtain the Sleep Sword in this chapter to make for an easier recruitment later. You might get trolled in this chapter. I'm sorry. You cannot recruit the enemy paladin that appears in this chapter. Xavier is recruitable, but you might know that he's the hardest recruitment in the series. I can't really give you a step-by-step on how to recruit him right here, but I might make a guide on him in the future. In short, it comes down to this. To recruit him, you need to have the 8 green civilians talk to the Leinster Armor Knights. The Leinster Armor Knights will not capture or kill the civilians. However, once a Leinster Armor has been talked to, he will turn green and start attacking Red Armor Knights, even fellow Leinster ones. There is also some Frege Knights that will attack anyone that's green or blue. Once all Leinster Knights are turned green, you can talk to Xavier with Leaf. If a green Leinster Knight ends up biting the dust, you can still recruit Xavier, but if a red one dies, it's over. This recruitment is the reason I recommended stealing a Sleep Sword during the route split. Depending on what you did on the route split, there might be 1 or 2 enemy paladins on the map, but no matter what, only one of them will be recruitable. If you have the Mage Princess, you can recruit the male paladin with her, but if you have the Priest, you can recruit the female paladin with him. Also, there is a Gaiden chapter coming up soon, and in order to access it, you need to have at least 1 unit left behind, but not dead. If you haven't left anyone behind so far, and you'd like to play the Gaiden chapter, this map has a pretty good chance to unlock it. Just leave 1 person on the map when escaping with Leaf, preferably someone you haven't really trained. You will get him back after chapter 21. The Gaiden map can be a bit tricky, but it has a lot of good treasure in it. This chapter is one of the reasons why it's important to buy door keys early on, but it's not the only reason. You might have noticed that one of the sisters you've recruited so far could not be promoted with a Knight Crest. That's because she promotes using the church in this chapter instead. If you visit the church with anyone else, you cannot promote her anymore. So like I hinted at earlier, in order to access chapter 21X, you need to have at least 1 unit captured. That can either mean they didn't make it to the end of an escape map before Leaf did, or they were being held by an enemy while you ended the map. This map gives you a chance to reunite with those captured units. In this chapter, you can recruit either the High Priest or the Sage. The Sage is a much better combatant, but the High Priest is not bad. To get the Sage to appear, you need to enter an area close to the boss and then talk to him with Leaf. Whichever character you do not recruit will leave after this chapter is over. To visit chapter 24X, the last Gaiden chapter in the game, you need to get a certain staff, locked in a chest room all the way up in the north. To open the door of the room, you'll need to let the kids roam free. The last 2 remaining chapters are very difficult, but me spoiling how to tackle them would not be fun. However, I will say that the final chapter is the second reason I recommend buying door keys, and it's very nice to have about 6 of them available. Also, last but not least, I just want to give a big shout out to the team behind Project Exile for working so hard to produce a quality translation patch. It turned out really well, and I can't wait to play through it. Thank you so much. If you're still here watching this, I hope you found the guide helpful. As I said, FE5 is my favorite game, and I'm very happy to be able to make it a bit more accessible to everyone. If you just can't get enough of FE5, I've got plenty of content of the game on my channel. Most of it involves playing the game while doing an Iron Man challenge, which means not resetting, even if someone dies. It's brutal, tense, and a lot of fun. You should check it out. Have a great day, and hopefully I'll see you around.